Hello, I'm Grin, and welcome to the UNSC Halo Pelican tutorial. I'm going to ramble and reminisce for a bit before I tell you how to build the vehicle. If you don't want any of that, which is understandable, click the button on the screen and it will skip you straight to the point where I just tell you how to build the vehicle. A common critique people often level against Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts, and cite as one of the main reasons it's the worst game ever, supports fascism and probably kicks puppies, is its heavy focus on vehicles. Despite this, however, Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts is easily my most played game from the last generation, and quite possibly my most played game ever. In fact, I'd wager the only game that even comes close to playtime for me is Warcraft 3. And this is because, for me, Warcraft 3 and Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts have a very similar appeal to them. You see, thanks to Warcraft 3's world editor, and definitely thanks to the user base of the Hive Workshop, long before Halo Wars ever existed, my friends and I were battling the UNSC and the Covenant against each other in an RTS. And literally years before Star Wars Empire at War ever came out, my army of Jedi were cutting through my friend's army of Stormtroopers in a nerdy all-night landfest. Warcraft 3, thanks to the world editor, means that Warcraft 3, in my opinion, is one of the greatest games ever made, because it's a game of endless potential. It's a game where I can create and play with whatever I want. And it's because of this potential that my friends and I still catch up at least once a month and play Warcraft 3 together, despite the fact that the game came out 14 years ago. For me, Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts shares this exact appeal. You see, I'm a little bit like a baby with a rattle. I never want to play with it unless someone else is. For instance, Lilac Wars, or Star Fox 64 to you international viewers, is one of my favourite games. However, while playing it, despite the fact that the R-Wing is one of the coolest vehicles to ever fly, I found myself constantly thinking, man, I really want to fly the Great Fox. And while Rogue Squadron let me fly an X-Wing, I wanted to fly a Star Destroyer. But easily the vehicle out of my grip that I most wanted to fly was Halo's UNSC Pelican. Though it was not that long ago, these days it's hard to imagine the technological well that existed when Halo 1 came out. If you want to know if something is achievable in a video game these days, you just have to simply look it up on the internet, and usually there's a YouTube video that tells you exactly how to do it, or tells you exactly that it's not possible. But Halo Combat Evolved came out in the year 2001, which means that it predated YouTube by 4 years. The UNSC Pelican in Halo 1 was in itself basically one of the main characters thanks to Foehammer flying it. It carted you around to various missions and became just as iconic as the Warthog. However, considering geeky information wasn't quite so easy to come by back then as it is today, there was no way to fully disprove the occasional rumor that popped up claiming that you could fly the Pelican in Halo 1 if you just happened to find it in secret areas. And thus, Grim of the Past searched fruitless hours trying to find a Pelican that didn't quite exist. Eventually, however, I moved on to Halo 2, and then later Halo 3, and succumbed to the exact same rumors about both of those games. I'm not gullible per se, I'm more like Fox Mulder, I just want to believe. So when I started playing Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts and began to fully grasp the level of complexity that was actually achievable in the vehicle builder, I realized something rather exciting. If I was able to build it, I could fly it, and for the first time in video game history, for me at least, I know some people achieved it with Gary's mods on their PC versions of Halo 1 and 2, but for me, for the first time in video game history, I could fly whatever I wanted. I could fly a Halo Pelican. The Halo Pelican in Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts is probably one of my earliest replicas, and because of that, it's one of the most polished replicas because it's gone through so many versions. In fact, my Halo Pelican's build is so precise that it takes up the amount of blocks that is the exact part limit. However, while a lot of my vehicles are a lot of fun to fly and play around with, but aren't actually good in challenges, the Halo Pelican is actually my main vehicle. If you've watched any of my Trophy Thomas videos, you would have noticed that I use it in a surprisingly large amount of challenges, and on top of that, I actually use it when moving around the map. This is because it's surprisingly sturdy, looks freaking badass, and, if you know how to fly it, can be moved with the precision of a scalpel. You see, while the Halo Pelican is not my first replica vehicle ever, that was probably my Star Wars Y-Wing, it is my first replica vehicle ever where I wouldn't have been satisfied unless it functioned like the Halo Pelican does in Halo, which basically means it had to be able to fly vertically and horizontally, and had to be able to strafe from side to side. And obviously I achieved replicating its functionality pretty damn well, because when Halo 4 came out, which actually finally allowed you to fly a Pelican, flying that Pelican feels a lot like flying my Pelican in Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts. I experimented with multiple ways of trying to achieve this, usually mucking around with detachers and foldable propellers, but what I actually settled on was surprisingly simplistic. At the back of my Pelican sits 2 engine blocks which both consist of 2 large jets, 2 large fuels, 1 medium fuel, and a super block which is attached to a tow bar. Both of these engine blocks mirror each other, so they both have the tow bar facing inwards. And then around the midsection of the Pelican are 4 small jets that sort of position themselves around the cargo hold of the Pelican, and also 2 medium fuels and a super fuel. The 4 small jets around the center of the vehicle are responsible for its lift, and most importantly are what allows the Pelican to achieve vertical takeoffs. How this works, however, is through utilizing the tow bars which are attached to the back engine pods. If you intend to fly vertically, all you have to do is hold down the B button, or whatever button you've assigned the tow bar to, and it disconnects the back engines. Since the back engines are all superjets and are all pointing backwards, your vehicle will no longer be going horizontal because they've lost power, and therefore the only force remaining is lift, and the small jets in the center of your Pelican will take you vertical. Now you'll no doubt have noticed that when I disengaged the tow bars just then, my back engines fell off, which isn't very helpful when you want to re-engage them. Luckily though, there's a simple solution to that as well, in the form of a cage. Literally the only thing that keeps my back jets from falling off when I disengage them is the fact that there's a cage holding them in. The cage is quite simply connected to the main part of the vehicle, which is the main part that the 4 small jets are connected to, but in no part connected to the 2 small engine blocks I showed you, aside from by way of tow bar. It might sound too simple to work, but it surprisingly does. As long as your cage is tight enough to keep your tow bars next to each other, as soon as you let go of the tow bar button, which you hold down to achieve your vertical takeoff, your back jets will instantly re-achieve power, kick back in, and you'll be flying horizontal in no time. That quick release function is actually why I use tow bars instead of detachers. You can achieve similar functionality with a detacher instead of a tow bar, but the issue is, once you detach a detacher, you have to hold down the right bumper button to reattach the item. But if you're using the tow bar method, you just have to simply stop holding the tow bar button, and it will instantly regain power. Once you start using your Pelican as often as I do, regaining power instantly is an essential function, because if you're flying your Pelican through some very claustrophobic areas, you're going to be constantly disengaging and re-engaging those back engines every couple of seconds. And really, aside from the wing placement, that's the entire functionality of my Pelican explained. Everything else on the Pelican, including those engines there, are just cosmetic. It's just that they take up more room and less block spaces, so when you're running really close to a part limit, it's good to use large engines and trays that don't do anything to free up some space. I hope this tutorial helped you, and you're inspired to apply this method to some of your own vehicles. And if you just want to copy my Pelican exactly, I'll now do a layer-by-layer reconstruction of it, that way you can follow it as a sort of guide. And so, until next time, thanks for watching. I have been and still am Grindle. And I'm off now to take a throat lozenge because I've been recording videos all day and I'm pretty sure I'm about to lose my voice.
Hmm.